We're here with Carl Hicks. Carl is the Executive Vice President of the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, and his story is really one that's pretty remarkable. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Michael, for having me.
Let's start with a little bit of background on yourself, just very briefly.
Well, I was a career soldier, retired from the military after my daughter became ill, went into business, and about 2 years ago, I joined the Pulmonary Hypertension Association full-time to fight against this disease. I had 3 beautiful children. My eldest and firstborn that I can recall looking down into her face when she was born and telling her I would protect her from everything was 13 years old, very healthy young gymnast, vibrant, full of life, and she came home short of breath one day, completely out of the blue. Daddy, I'm having trouble breathing. I don't understand this. We were living in Europe at the time. I was stationed there as a military officer. And we didn't really see any concerns because she was in such perfectly good health. A couple days later, she fainted in front of us. Of course, we got her to the doctor right away. Doctor said, childhood asthma, it's not a problem. Take this inhaler and go home and you'll be all right. They told us that they grew out of it, and so we weren't overly concerned. But as the weeks went by, we could tell that inhaler didn't help. Took her back to another doctor, and that doctor said, you'll be at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in 48 hours. They sent us back, and we were there for about 3 days. Doctor asked me if I'd step around the corner. He says, Colonel Hicks, I regret to inform you, but your daughter's got a terminal illness. And there's nothing we can do for her. She got less than a year to live. I'd been a tough guy in the military. I'd been a ranger. And I thought I could handle anything. As you might guess, that was a tough one. Fortunately, they sent us to see a physician in New York City at Columbia Presbyterian who turned out to be the preeminent physician and researcher in the world. Her name was Dr. Robin Barst.
Very fortunate.
Indeed, and so she said, yes, she does have this after a considerable amount of testing, confirmed it. She said, I don't believe that we can't keep her alive longer. The only thing that will be a cure for her will be a lung transplant or a heart-lung transplant. We're not doing those very well in May of 1994, but each year we keep her alive, they get better at it. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to launch down the trail to keep her alive year in and year out as long as we can. The military sent us to a place where we get good medical treatment, where there was another military medical center, Fort Lewis, Washington. And we packed up our family and moved from Europe to Fort Lewis and launched down this trail of caring for Megan to try to save her life.
And then what?
We're very fortunate to have found Dr. Barst because, again, she was on the cutting edge, and we were back to New York City and Columbia Presbyterian every 3 months, where she would test her and tweak the medications and try new medications. You know, back when Megan was diagnosed in '94, there were 0 FDA-approved medications for pulmonary hypertension. And we wanted her to have as normal a life as we could. We wanted her to have the fun, to go to the proms, to get the car, do the dating, but we couldn't look too far in the future. It was too fearsome for us because we saw others that lost their children along the way. But Megan did make it through college, graduated through college. At different times, she would be taking 15 or 20 medications alone. A bowl that would be the size of a cereal bowl full of pills, just so that she could do what you and I do every day and take for granted, to breathe. Megan continued to fight, but we always feared that someday we get the word that it was time to go to that transplant. And we dreaded every trip to New York City as a result. But eventually, we got that word. Within a few months, we got a call, and of course, I was on the East Coast, and they're on the West Coast, and the call came at 3 a.m. in the morning. Megan gets on the phone and said, Daddy, come quick, they got organs, they got organs. So I'm going crazy trying to get out of Washington, D.C. at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I made it back. But by the time I made it all the way back to the West Coast, they completed the operation, the 8-hour operation. And as I'm running down the hallway, I could see my little family down there at the end of the hallway. Just as a doctor's walking out, and he said, it looks like she's done okay with the operation. Heart-lung transplant. And at that very instant, another doctor came out of the doors, mask still on, and grabbed that guy and ran back in. Several more hours before one of them came out, and they said, we're sorry, but but something had happened and she bled out, and so we had to reopen her quickly, and so we've got her alive again. We've got her in a coma. I'm afraid it's going to be a coma for a long time. Well, eventually she fought her way back, and the doctor said, okay, you can take her home. So I said, Megan, how would you like to go home? Shall we take the plane? We'll get great seats. We had our car down there from college. She said, no, Dad, I want to drive. I said, honey, you've been in Stanford for a long time, in the hospital for a long time. Dad, I want to drive. Megan, why? I just want to see Stanford University Medical Center in my rearview mirror. And over the months, she fought her way back, but she never really thrived after that. And finally, it was about November of '08, and we found ourselves making frequent trips down to Stanford. She'd become very ill. We're in the ICU for a couple of days. And one morning, about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, my wife was in there, Megan and I, and her brothers and sisters were out in the waiting room. And she said, and my wife said, well, let's have a cup of coffee. So I got up and walked outside to get a cup of coffee to bring it back in. And my wife screamed, get back in here. So I go running back in, and there was already a nurse doing chest compressions on my daughter. They lined up outside the door because you only do it a minute or two before you become exhausted. I'm standing right at Megan's foot, right at her feet, and they're doing chest compressions. Finally, the doctor turns to me and says, Mr. Hicks, he says, we've been at this for 45 minutes now. And usually, they don't come back after that. I said, you can stop. We brought her brother and sister in, made a circle around the bed, said a prayer. She fluttered off to heaven. That's the face of this disease. That's the face of pulmonary hypertension. And that's the disease that we're going to defeat.
Once that happened, how did you get involved with the association?
At the time that she passed away, I had served on the board for some period of time and was serving as the chairman of the board of the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. So I remained on the board. And about 2 years ago, we decided we needed to do some more things with regards to raising additional funding for this fight because we're making such great progress. There is real hope for this disease. I think we're clearly getting closer and closer every day, but we're not there yet. And so we've got to carry it the rest of the way down the field, and what will fuel that drive is simply dollar bills and the Pulmonary Hypertension Association.
What can they do? Where do they go?
Well, the best place to go today is to go to our site called phaware.org. And that's a portal that you can go to and can learn all the basics about this. You can see videos about this. You can see Lucas Van Wormer on our public service announcements. And most importantly, you can find a spot to donate.